My book on Islamophilia, it's not actually currently available, which is rather annoying. It's undergoing a brief rewrite and a reissue quite soon. But I came up with the term Islamophilia because really, first of all, I've become so bored of hearing what I think of as being its sort of opposite, the word Islamophobia, which had been around for so many years and meant so little, or at least what it did mean was so wrong and so irritatingly wrong. I thought something far more prevalent was not a phobia, certainly not an irrational fear of Islam, but a sort of a weird love of Islam, not by Muslims, but by non-Muslims. It'd be understandable for Muslims to love Islam. It was just rather strange that so many people who were not Muslims, and in many cases seemed to know absolutely nothing about Islam, were so enamored of the religion. And
so according to Douglas Murray, it is very normal for a person who doesn't know anything about Islam to be Islamophobic. But it is not normal for a person who he claims does not know anything about Islam to love Islam. I wonder how high is the cost of sincerity and genuineness in Europe that none of them seems to have it.
They've been noticing this for a long time. Everyone from actors and movie stars to prime ministers and presidents who would be critical, and understandably and rightly critical, of any and all belief systems, should there need to be, but who, when it came to Islam, only talked in this sort of slathering of praise and adoration. I mean, I lost count of the numbers of politicians who started in the last 15 years quoting in speeches their favorite bits of the Quran. It's the sort of, why are you doing that?
And of course, Barack Obama said that the most beautiful sound is the call to prayer, right, of the Hazan. So.
Yeah. There were so many cases of it, and to my mind, it seemed far more prevalent and obvious than, as I say, its opposite. So no, my personal favorite is an exhibition called 1001 Islamic Inventions, which toured the science museums of the Western world, including America and Great Britain and other countries. And this exhibition basically advocated, it was totally anti-scientific, really. It was an act of proselytism by the Muslim Brotherhood, is how it started out. But this exhibition basically posited that Islam had invented the entire world, not just the creation of the world, but everything since. Landscape gardening and also urban planning, almost all successes of science, cinema, and it did this amazing sort of Soviet-style reverse engineering on history and indeed on facts, and because it was 1001 Islamic inventions, it passed muster. I mean, if anyone had tried to claim that any other religion had sort of been responsible for absolutely every scientific invention, then people would raise an eyebrow and certainly wouldn't hand over the Science Museum in the national capital to such a piece of casuistry. But on this occasion they did, and as I say, that's an example of Islamophilia right in front of you.
Just a sincere question. Those who keep cherishing this guy and applauding for him and following him up and down, his fans, I mean, what do you make of him when he laughs such a careless laughter? Like, this is so degrading of him that takes him down to 0%. I thought this was a very important personality and an intellectual personality at that, but oh, poor me, I was so wrong. He is nothing close to that. History has never recorded that a civilization denies benefiting from the previous civilization, or from that civilization that is coexisting with it in the same era, except for such Western bigots, the likes of this Douglas Murray. There was no way the Egyptian civilization could ever deny benefiting from the Mesopotamian civilization. And neither could the Persian civilization deny benefiting from the previous civilizations to it. The same goes to the Indian civilization. It could never deny benefiting from the previous civilizations to it. And the same thing goes to the Chinese civilization. And the same thing goes to the Roman civilization. The same thing goes to the Greek civilization. And the same thing goes to the Muslim, the Islamic civilization that benefited so much from the civilizations before it, like the Roman and the Greek. The starting point of the Islamic civilization is during the reign of Harun al-Rashid, when he commanded the establishment of the Bayt al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, in which the non-Arab books were translated into Arabic, and then he benefited from civilizations that occurred far away from Arabia. And that is the norm. Except for such bigots that we go around denying fully that they did not benefit anything from the previous civilization, which can never be true. This is the same like denying that you have ever inherited anything from your ancestors. And that is just the nature of a human being. God created them in such a way that they take over from others. You take over something, you modify it, and you create your own, and that becomes your civilization. Then the next people that are coming after you, they take over from what you have, they modernize it, and they add their own, and it becomes their own civilization. Nobody can ever reject this, except a person who is hypocritically illiterate, but sincerely an illiterate.
My favorite example was the rewriting of the Wright brothers, where the Wright brothers were wrong, that they didn't invent flight, but that flight was invented by a Muslim in, I think, the 10th century, or in Andalusia or something. And the actual historical descriptions of this guy is there was a guy who kept on flinging himself off high buildings and falling to earth at an incredible speed.
Right. Or just jumping from any place and committing suicide becomes the invention of flight, right?
Yeah.
And it gets completely worse when he talks about Ibn Firnas discovering aviation or inventing the idea of aviation. Something has to start from somewhere. There is no way you can say that the use of a horse cart did not lead to the discovery of automotive vehicles. So it is very ingenuine of him to refer to Abbas ibn Firnas as the guy who kept on falling from high buildings just to claim that he discovered the idea of the aircraft. Though the two Wright brothers might have invented the airplane, but Abbas ibn Firnas was the owner of the initial idea. But it is so obvious that at that time he had no idea about the process of landing. That is why instead of landing, he fell.
Actually been exposed to this type of thinking in my own scientific work, where someone usually from that part of the world, or at least of that faith, will write to me to say, oh, but you know that Charles Darwin is not really the guy who should be most known for the theory of evolution. And then they'll cite some guy, and then through some unbelievably circuitous route of mental gymnastics, the real inventor, discoverer of the theory of evolution is some guy. But I think this is a manifestation of identity politics. I mean, you see the same thing with African studies, right? Right? The ancient Greeks were really blacks, right? And then so every single group that feels somehow aggrieved rewrites history so that all of the great wonders of the world are really theirs, right?
Yes, and I mean,
this is what happens when an intellectual mind becomes covered by the cloud of lies and deceit, and way to push out his own agenda and his own narrative. We all know the fact that the Western civilization did everything possible to rewrite the history and the civilizations of the previous civilizations to it. And Islam was their main target. When they invaded Iraq in the Tatar war, they destroyed the Baitul Hikmah, which was the biggest library and encyclopedia for knowledge. They stole the books they were able to carry out of Iraq, and the remaining books were flown into the river until it is reported that the color of the river became ink. So when you rewrite the history of Africa and Africans are agitating, and Africans are looking for their real history, now you blame them for claiming everything to themselves. Meanwhile, you know that everything you are sitting on is because you had to rewrite their history, and so you derailed their thinking to think that your civilization is just the ultimate. But you fail to understand something. Just like a human being, no civilization has ever tasted eternity. When you grow to the level you are now, the next thing is to fall. And you are seriously working on that. That's why you have gathered all the sins of the previous nations from the time that God created the world to this time, and all the sins that made God to destroy several nations, several different nations are gathered onto your own civilization now. Be it the sheer disbelief in the Creator, be it the act of the people of Lot, the act of the people of Lot, the Sodom and the Gomorrah, and you name it. There is no sin, there's no evil that you have left out from this your civilization. Please do not go away without subscribing. Turn on the notification button and share the video. May Allah bless you as you do so. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.